he said there's an accident on the freeway, so it's just gonna have to be late.
Got it. Thank you, Alex. Okay, so, where am I? Luke. Luke, is Gru a good person or a bad person?
I honestly don't know. I'd say he's a good person at heart, but on the outside, he would be as you see him, he'd be like a bad person. So.
And is there some way to explain why he's at sometimes a good person and sometimes bad, or maybe in the longer scheme of things, he goes from being a mostly bad person now to a predominantly good person? Is there an explanation for that?
I mean, he kind of had to adopt these 3 girls, and over time, he kind of like started to like them more and more. So I don't know if they had an effect on that, but maybe throughout his childhood, because he had a bad childhood too. So there was times in the movie where he would reflect on it. So yeah.
Okay, interesting, isn't it? So Despicable Me has quite a fantastic title to begin with, and it is kind of this human exploration of, are we basically bad or are we basically good, and what makes the difference, right? So there is something about being inspired, right? And these 3 little girls in particular, like, it starts out they're driving him crazy, but then there's something deeper, more important about them that actually drives him to a more sane life and to a better life. Do you notice, though, that part of the confusion in trying to find an answer to the question is because we're approaching one-dimensionally, right? There's just Gru. Is he bad? Is he good? Well, he's a little of both. Why is he sometimes good? Why is he sometimes bad? And it's pretty much the human approach looking out all around us. Are people basically good or basically bad? And what determines what they'll be today or tomorrow or the next time? Is it nature? Is it nurture? All those sorts of questions. So now we're moving on to this subject of sanctification. So after 10 weeks now, the next step we take is, so are we basically good or basically bad? And we're going to try and answer that question on the basis of what we observe in a person, right? So what would we discover if we followed you around for the day and took notes, right? Are you basically a good person or basically a bad person? And that would be an outward thing. You ever heard of the movie Liar, Liar? No? Okay, so that's an interesting movie too, because this thing that happens to the main person in the movie is that they lose the capacity to deceive with their words. So whatever they're thinking comes out of their mouth. It's quite...
Adam Sandler?
Yeah. Okay, yeah, right? And so, oh my gosh, right? So people would have thought that you were a nice person, but now that they know, instead of just watching you on the outside, they can hear what's going on in your head. You're not a nice person at all. You're a terrible person. So, but back up just a minute. So, after 10 weeks, that's today, Nicholas, what have we learned so far in 10 weeks of theology?
I would say we learned a lot.
That's a great answer. Thank you for giving the right answer. Like what? For example.
Well, we learned about kind of like truth and questions that need to be answered.
Okay. Do we have a free will?
See, no.
No, okay. Well, so we learned that. Not everybody has. Some students are still coming up with that as their answer. Well, because we have a free will, X. Okay. And
we learned about the okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
The pyramids. The green B is like where you want to be, and then the red pyramid is where some of us are.
Good job, Nicholas. And so are you one-dimensional or are you three-dimensional?
I would say I'm still working to be 3.
Okay, and are you basically a good person or bad person?
I would say like in the middle, honestly.
So you're just a single person, you're one-dimensional.
Yeah.
Oh, so what happens when you die, Nicholas?
Good question. I don't know.
So
To be determined. I'll find out in about a couple years. I don't know. Or a lot of years.
That was a lot of years.
I
You
know
sound
I
like-
messed up. I messed up on the words. My bad.
No, everybody appreciates your candid answers, Nicholas. It's helpful for people to say what's on our mind sometimes, but I think all of your classmates are hoping it's not in a couple of years.
Oh yeah, no, I meant a lot of years.
A lot of years, okay. Well, but that tells us something, doesn't it? If this place is the difficulty, is the challenge, if this world that we live in is the threat to what's actually our life, why would we feel the way we do about dying when you're young? That tells us something important, right? And this is confusing. Hey, there's Liz, you made it. This is confusing for a lot of people. If being with God, hey, Liz, you made it. Good job. Okay. If paradise is the goal, why is everybody so stuck here? Joanna, I think you're a good person to answer that question.
Yeah. Let's see. Well, I think I think we see good things here. We see good things that God gives us. I have people I love who are here.
So there's no good things in paradise.
No, there are. There are. We just don't have experienced it. Like, this is what we know. So this is what you're okay with, maybe.
You're okay with, maybe. Well, we do tend to like things that we're familiar with rather than something that we are not familiar with. This is actually one of the difficulties in child protective services, is that children would prefer to stay in an abusive home than to go to a home they know nothing about, right? So the evil I know is better than the unknown. That's a difficulty, okay? So depending on what we've learned or haven't learned, so it's interesting at 10 weeks in, if I talk from student to student, some students have heard me talk about things but are still very much grounded in a one-dimensional worldview, right? See themselves on some kind of a percentage scale. So where am I in the pyramid? Am I ahead of most people or am I behind? What's my ability to compete for happiness, for the things that I want in this material world? And I'd rather not think about it, but sometimes people like my professor make me think about what's next. And is that a gamble? Is it a negative? Is it something I'd rather not think about and actually not ever have happen if that were possible? These are the kinds of questions I'm stuck with. So when we get to the chapter on sanctification, so after 10 weeks now, the question is, are you going to be a good person? Like, well, define good and why? Why would I want to be a good person? What happens if I'm not a good person? So we're tangled up in all those kinds of questions in this one-dimensional red pyramid worldview. Only time and only material life, probably, or maybe, or hopefully. But let's back up and see if what we learned in a different way, what I'm asking you to think about, the what if sort of things. What if the essence of your life is a soul, not a body? What if the essence of your life now is a soul that's regenerated by God Himself through God's Word and animated, energized by God's Spirit? What if that's the case? So being a good person wouldn't be something that I'm trying to make happen so I can get something I don't have. It's something I can't keep from happening. I'll ask you some questions about that. Nick Kyle, do you recognize what there's a picture of on the slide? You guys recognize this? Nick, Kyle?
It's a rocket?
It's a rocket. Do you know which rocket?
No, I'm not sure.
Go to Cape Canaveral in Florida, they have one of these. It's laying on its side. It takes up most of a really long building. Do you know the Apollo program? Yes, heard of it? Do you remember which rocket got the Apollo capsules where they needed to be? This is called a Saturn V rocket. Okay, it is quite magnificent. It's huge, for one thing. The power in this thing is really phenomenal. To get this much weight off the ground and moving as fast as it moves it is really quite phenomenal. NASA built 38 of them. Why did they keep building them? Well, because it's one and done, right? You send this thing up and it doesn't come back. It disintegrates when it falls back into the atmosphere. Okay, so 38 of them. Every one of them worked perfectly. That's quite a thing, isn't it? 38 times. This is basically a giant can of explosives, and it always did what it was supposed to do. I'm happy to say it was invented, designed by a German. So somebody like from where I'm from, German designed this thing. Okay, so Nick, Kyle, you're sitting in the capsule at the top of this thing with two friends, right? What's next? You got all this rocket down below you. It's like 300 feet of rocket here. Nick, Kyle, what is there to do?
I'm not sure.
Nick, Kyle, if I put you in a really fast car with a lot of road in front of you, do you know what to do next?
Go very fast.
Yeah, how are you going to do it? You going to get out of the car and run?
No.
No, you're going to get out of the car and push the car.
Yeah.
No, that would not be fast. You're in a really fast car and there's a lot of road ahead of you. What do?
Just push on the pedal.
Yes, you don't push on it, you tromp it. Colin, have you tromped the gas pedal? It's quite an experience, isn't it? It's like that's Boersville. That's highway driving. This is like, just mash it to the floor and watch what happens. Okay, so if you're in this capsule, you're not having thoughts about, well, I wonder if I made this capsule right, because you didn't actually make the capsule. Okay, but you have a lot of confidence in the capsule because the person that did made it so it never goes wrong. That's quite fantastic, right? And I have this idea about how awesome it would be to go to the moon. Okay, and so would you climb out of the capsule, throw your rope, rappel down, and start pushing up on it? What? Okay, you just push the go button on this thing and everything works just like it's supposed to. And then you orbit the moon and you go down there and you hop around, drive your little dune buggy and pick up some rocks and stuff, and you bring it all home again, right? This is where we're at in this semester. The first 10 weeks have told us, explained to us that there's a rocket that we're a part of, that knows what's supposed to happen. So what do we do? What do we do after 10 weeks of theology is you discover what this has made possible. Yes?
How do you get your moon rocks back to the earth if it burns up before when it gets back in the atmosphere? I'm sorry.
Well, just take this out for a spin, Joanna. If the moon rocks burn up when you come back in, so do you.
I know, that's what
Okay. So there's a difference between the capsule that's at the top of all of this and the rest of it, okay? So if you've ever looked at the Apollo capsule, the bottom of the capsule is all heat shield, right? So when it's coming back in, it comes in backwards so that the heat shield can take all of the heat, right? And there's interesting thing, you should see Apollo 13 because you'll get to watch this. But if you come back in too steep, you come in too fast and the fire is too hot, even for how the capsule's built. If you come in too shallow, it's not as hot, but you'll skip off and then it will actually never see you again. Okay, so you have to get this just right. So it's not too much heat, but you won't skip off, but heat is okay because we are provided for it. Now, notice everything in God's creation has a parallel, okay? How does a person get from this world into the next, from time to eternity, from physical universe to spiritual universe? Well, God has constructed the soul in such a way that it will pass through this, what's in between, and won't burn up.
Wow, thank you.
So rocks plus astronaut gonna be okay. Good.
Awesome.
Okay. So interestingly, if we actually haven't been affected by the first 10 weeks of the semester, the last 5 weeks are going to look pretty much like the first 10. In other words, people are stuck justifying how they already are. This is how I think. This is how I think things work, and I'm going to keep thinking and working like this, which means every subject that comes to me, I'm going to have to defend myself against. So now you're going to talk about being a good person, and I'm going to have to wrestle with, well, I'm a good person. And then I'm going to say, well, are you good enough? And you're going to say, well, compared to who? See, and so I'm going to try and make myself feel good enough by saying, well, I'm better than these people. Yeah, but you're not as good as these people. And then you're going to start making excuses or reasons for, well, I would be a better person, except that it's not my fault. And all that. Look, that's not going anywhere productive. What we're trying to do is take that off the table. You're already a good person. How good of a person? 100% good, as in perfect, as in you never do anything wrong. Never a wrong thought, never a wrong feeling, never a wrong determination in your life. You have a regenerate soul that's 100% right, 100% of the time. All right, good. What's the challenge then? That regenerate soul lives inside a contrary human nature. Okay, so imagine, you know who? Yeah, is that right? Yeah, Iron Man built himself a suit, right? Okay, so there's the guy inside the suit. What happens if the suit gets a mind of its own and decides to do the opposite of what the person inside the suit wants to do, right? So I would like to help Elizabeth off the ground. She fell down. I'm going to reach down. I'm going to help her back up to her feet. That's what I want to do, right? She skinned her knee. I'm going to put a Band-Aid on and stuff. Okay, I want to help her. And as I reached down to her, my suit went whack. Whoa, no. Ah, see? And then Elizabeth's like, why are you being mean to me? So, well, I'm not, but it's the suit. Yeah. Well, okay, so this is the problem. So am I strong enough inside the suit to do the right thing, even though the suit's trying to do the wrong thing? And there's an interesting verse in Romans 7. If you know Romans 7, you know that Paul's having this argument with himself. The good things I want to do, I don't do. Things I don't want to do, I find myself doing those things. So either Paul has some deep psychological problems here and a multiple personality disorder, which some people have proposed, or he's having this conflict, body and soul, right? His corrupt human nature is always acting according to that corruption. And even if it doesn't succeed in acting it out, he's still aware of it. He's still thinking about doing the wrong thing and wanting to do the wrong thing. So back and forth this way, okay? So then he concludes, after he talks about this contest between his two natures, so I find this to be a principle at work, that when I want to do good, evil lies close at hand. Like every time I want to do anything, say anything, think anything good, my human nature is right there trying to make a mess of it, trying to ruin it, kind of a thing. Okay, so those are the tensions that are going on in this subject called sanctification. So, next question. Okay, 10 weeks in, we've been through everything, including justification and conversion. All right, so what's the next question depends on the worldview. Okay, so Preston, read number 1, please. What's the next question?
What must I do to be saved?
Why are you asking that question, Preston?
Because I think I have to save myself.
Yeah, even though for 10 weeks I've been telling you that you can't and that you don't have to, right?
Yeah.
But that's where you live, right? That's where a drowning person's mind is. Even if I brought you out of the water and I put you on the beach, the water's still right there and your mind's still on, yeah, but what happens if I'm in the water again? So notice human nature, okay? Your physiology, your mind will never get past number one. So actually you can't make any progress at all because you're stuck on number one. And then that brings you to number two, Preston.
How can I do that?
Yeah. See, now how's that going to work? I'm a drowning person, so how am I going to be a good person while I'm drowning? That's not going to work. And yet that seems to be what religion is telling me. So I have to play mind games with myself, right? I can tell myself that I'm not a bad person for trying to keep myself alive in the water. And I'm not a bad person when I take what other people had so that I don't sink in the water. And I'm not a bad person even though I killed the lifeguard that swam out to get me. That doesn't make me a bad person. There's a reason for that. I have an explanation for that. I'm selfish. Yeah. Who isn't, right? So you can't condemn me for being selfish like everybody else is selfish. And you can't condemn me for being selfish when I'm just trying to do number one. I'm just trying to save myself here. Notice why people walking away from religion then. Okay, so historically, religion, all of the religions in general said that you're a bad person if you're selfish, and if you're selfish, you have a bad experience after you die. If you're reincarnated, you're going to come back as a rat or a bug, okay? Or if there's no reincarnation, you find yourself in hell forever. Okay, so what am I supposed to do about that? Well, God threatens you, so the threats are supposed to help somehow, and God encourages you and maybe inspires you and sends teachers who provide good examples for you. So that's supposed to make you somehow a better person, but I'm not. So it doesn't work. So people basically abandon it. So kind of the human population is all in. That if we only have this world to live in, even if there is another world, I don't know what that world's about, then it makes sense to be as happy as I can, as much of the time as I can, and don't ruin that happiness by telling me I'm wrong because I'm selfish, okay? So notice how you can't make progress. Colin, when does the drowning person save the lifeguard?
Well, theoretically, you can't, because he's still drowning.
Never. The answer is never. Okay, we're never gonna reverse roles here. You would have to be a different person to be the one that's the lifeguard now. And when does the fruit make the tree that made it, Connor?
Yes.
Say it again.
When does the fruit after it gets scattered and then grows into the tree?
Okay, so Connor, this is consistently the answer I get. It's awesome how human nature works. Connor says, well, the fruit goes to the ground and gets scattered, and then the fruit disintegrates, which leaves the seed in the ground, and then the seed in the ground makes a fruit tree, right? Except that that's not the tree that made the fruit. That's the next tree. When does the fruit make the tree that made it? Never. Okay, so why am I asking this ridiculous question? Because the idea is that if I'm a good enough person, that will justify me before God. Well, that never happens. You have to be a good person already in order to be a good person. You have to already be good to do good things in your life. So that brings us to this other model then. 10 weeks in, I'm making an argument for, and you can keep pounding on this with your hammer, that there is a reality that exists independently of us out there, okay? That our lives are affected by and ordered by. And happily, that reality includes having been redeemed and provided for. Now, why don't you just take a minute, though, and think about the power and the magnitude of the witness of nature, okay? The stability of of nature, the natural universe, right? The planets in motion, so stable that you can have this thing called a calendar. Ever think about that? How's that actually possible? You would think if the universe were evolutionary in nature, we actually wouldn't ever know whether we're going to speed up or slow down or go out of orbit or who knows what. But for centuries and millennium, we've been following a calendar that's stable. And it's interesting, you have to tweak it, right? Every 4 years you go, we're off just a little bit, but okay. Rotation, a 24-hour day. How do you do that? We can be so precise about it that you can have an atomic clock that's like accurate to like the nanosecond. Wow, okay. And then there's you, how you operate. Your eyes work, your ears hear, your nose smells, your tongue tastes, unless you have COVID, which is we don't want you to have, okay? You can do this thing called sleeping. What? How's that work? Well, someone outside of you is making you go, which makes it possible for you to just kind of check out. And you can even check out when you're awake. It's called daydreaming, which is where traffic accidents on highways come from and then ruin Lizdy's life almost. Okay, there's the reality, and it's providential in nature. The food comes to you for the most part. The water comes out of the faucet. I mean, the level of our experience and how life is provided for us is phenomenal. There's a witness in that. Okay, so what's the human project? Does the witness of experience in nature and in biblical revelation, is that impressing on you the challenge of keeping yourself alive another day? Is it really you versus everybody else and you against God? Or does your experience universally and all day long seem to say that your life comes to you, it's been given to you? The question is not whether you can build the rocket. The question isn't whether you can push the rocket up in the air. The question is, what are you going to do with all of this life that's been provided for you? That's the realization piece. Okay, so here's the thing. Realization. What is it like to be fabulously wealthy? I mean, really, what's it like to have a private limousine, or better than a limousine, a private helicopter, a private jet, a private yacht, right? There are people that left the US back in March and April to wait this thing out in New Zealand, just having a great time in New Zealand, and let us know when this is over with. What's that? What must that be like, right? To have a credit card that has no ceiling on it. It just keeps going. Paris Hilton got one of these credit cards. What's that like? I don't know. But you do have experiences of making choices, from what you're going to eat at the next meal to what flavor coffee you're going to have to buying your next pair of shoes. Okay, so you do have a sense of that. How powerful is that compared to times when you would deny yourself in order to provide something for someone else, right? What is it like to drive your vehicle in a way that reduces the likelihood of accident or injury, and that actually makes somebody else's day maybe a little better? Let me let you in, right? Let me not keep changing lanes. Let me not be in a hurry. Kind of like, no way. Okay, right? What's it like to go hungry, like for a long time, a lot longer than you like to be hungry? What if you were a firefighter that just didn't want to stop until you felt like you had this thing under control enough that the people that live around the fire were not going to be adversely affected by it? What's that like, right? So short-term, long-term, what is it like to set yourself on a course of studies that's going to control the next 13 years of your life? So it's mostly not going to be about having fun or doing the things you want to do. That's a medical track, but what will come of it? That's the realization piece. It's profound. And then number 3, of course, the difference in these models is it's not can I make it happen, it's how can I not make it happen? Okay, so different worldviews for our subject. Okay, one more picture to try to make this as plain as I can for you. I want you to never mind the right third of the screen. Okay, just work with the block in the middle. It says morality, and what comes from that going to the left. Okay. Comparative religions. You heard of that? Comparative religions? This kind of became popular in the late 19th century, early 20th century, and people thought they had discovered something here. History of conflict on religious basis, yes? So the Christians against the Muslims, the Jews against the Christians, the Muslims against everybody, you know, and then in Europe, interestingly, within Christianity, it was the evangelicals, Lutherans against the Catholics, and they were at physical, literal war with each other, Spanish Inquisition, and you name it. Okay, so that's too narrow a thought, though, about religion. Then go broader. So atheism is a religion too. It means to order people's lives. That's a bloody, violent history too. Okay, so comparative religions says, oh, you know what? All religions are basically the same. All religions say that you have to be a good person if you want to have a good life. It's just that simple. So whether you have God in the equation or not, doesn't matter. If there is a God, this is how God thinks. If there isn't a God, this is how things work. If you're a good person, you have a good experience, a good result. Okay, so what do you have to do to have a life, to save your life? You have to be a good person. Okay, Christianity says do it like this. Judaism says do it like that. Hinduism says do it like this. Marxism says do it like this. Republicanism says like this. Democrats say like that. But it's all going on the same. Have to be a good person to save myself. Is this doomed to be inherently selfish? Who's on the drowning person's mind? The drowning person. There's no, I mean, you can see it, can't you? You have to be a good person, otherwise you're going to have a bad experience. Why am I trying to be a good person, or how good of a person am I willing to be? Well, as good as I need to be to have the experience that I want. What was going on with Gru? Gru was trying to have a certain kind of experience in the course of his life. Call it success, right? He wanted to succeed in what he was doing. He wanted to have wealth and power by human standards. He thought that getting these 3 girls would help him accomplish that, right? This is a means to an end. And then he found a different kind of good, but he's still being good to them in a way that satisfies himself, right? Why did he get the little fluffy unicorn for the little girl? He didn't like her being disappointed. Why? Because he's in a relationship with her. So her disappointment makes him disappointment. Her sadness now is going to make him sad. That's how it works, right? If you're friends with a person and somebody throws a big sopping wet blanket over both of you, then you're both under this soggy blanket. Okay, so I don't want to be there. So then what's he do? Of course, he pulls out his giant mega gun and blows the whole thing to smithereens, and the creep that worked there kind of, okay, now he's happy about it, right? So is he a good person? Did he do a good thing? Or was it still selfish in nature? No. There is one other religion. It's not on here. You can't compare it. You can contrast it. You can't compare it. Okay. Having been saved already, you're already saved. You're already saved. You already have a life provided for you. You already know how to swim. You already know how to save people who are drowning. And I'll give you one more advantage. You're in waist deep water. waist deep water, friends, okay? And there's 2 and 3-year-olds that are drowning in the waist deep water. What are you gonna do? Liz D, what are you gonna do?
Try to help them.
Try to help them.
Help them.
Yeah, don't. Do you remember this movie called The Rock? Nicolas Cage, who's I don't think is that good, but Sean Connery, awesome. And they need to do this thing, right? And Sean Connery's explaining how it works, and he says, okay. And Nicolas Cage goes, well, I'll try. And Sean Connery, hey, he passed away this week. Sean Connery died this week. Sean Connery says, I'll try. That's what the losers say, right? Okay, no. Lizzie, that's a 2-year-old kid, right? She weighs like 10 pounds. Just walk over and pull her up out of the water. How could you not do that? Why wouldn't you do that? And notice, you're not trying to get something for yourself. I already got everything. I'm trying to, how could I not do that? So notice the difference when being a good person is a product of having already been made a good person, as opposed to I'm kind of fundamentally not a good person, but I'm trying to look like a good person or pretend I'm a good person to get something that's threatening me. Or yeah. Okay. Definitions. We're mixing languages here, and that's inherently problematic. Sanctus, Latin, right? For hagiadzo, fortunately, I haven't seen that in this. Hagios, hagiadzo, Greek, sanctus, Latin, holy, English. What does holy mean? Ridge, do you know what holy means?
I don't know if like it's the correct, but I would say it's kind of like sacred.
Which interestingly is another form of the Latin word, right? The sac part, S-A-C, sanctus, sacred, okay. Sacred, yes. What does that mean, Ridge?
I don't really know how to define it. But
Holy mean good?
yeah, I would say so.
Doesn't that come to mind? Holy is good. Yes? Okay. Yeah. Okay, now we have to define good though. How do I know what good is? God is good, okay, and I'm supposed to be good like God is good. Now I'm in a bad way again, right? So what is holy? Does it mean it's good, and then I have to have a standard for good, and then what's going to be the result of that? Holy actually just means set aside. Okay, so think about sanctuary. Bird sanctuary, wildlife sanctuary. It's a place that's set aside where animals are safe. Okay, so think about the two ideas here. If sanctification is good, then it's inside of a red pyramid model where there's the standard that I'm required to meet or suffer accordingly. Okay, if it's actually a set-aside place, then it's not expecting more from me, it's relieving me from expectations. So think about it. The biblical notion of sanctification is not making something happen that hasn't happened. It's more of this realizing what's already the case. You're in a safe place. Liz, you can't drown in the water. Why not? Well, for one thing, it's waist deep. For another thing is you're a swimmer. For a third thing is you're not just a swimmer, you're a lifeguard. For a fourth thing, there's like 50 other lifeguards standing around. So if something went wrong with you somehow, they would be there to save you. Fifth thing, even if you died in the water, you can't die. Okay, that's a safe place to be. Okay, nothing's going to come at you that's going to undermine or demolish or ruin your life. It can't be. Everything works for good in this situation where you find yourself. Okay. So, in a sense, why be holy isn't necessarily the right question. Why be holy is a function of this, I need to be something I'm not or get somewhere I'm not. Okay, there's expectations that I have to meet, and will I be able to? Okay. How is it that I'm holy? That's a different question. How is it that I already exist in a safe place? And what's the purpose of that safety? Okay. So notice we get to see. Is your life about getting what you don't have and being where you aren't, which is ruining Lizzie's experience this morning? Or is life about using it or losing it? In other words, I don't realize what things are by keeping them. I realize what things are by using them. Car, right? There are some classic cars out there that have like 60 miles on them, right? Yeah, you have one? What is it?
It's a 1974 Corvette Stingray.
A 1974 Corvette Stingray. And how many miles does it have on it?
Got 96,000.
Oh, that's a lot of miles. Okay.
It's less than 100 though. Usually all cars don't have that.
Well, you're right. So you ever seen Ferris Bueller?
Yeah.
Cameron's father. He doesn't drive a Ferris. He just rubs it with a diaper, right? You remember Ferris's answer? A man with priorities so screwed up does not deserve such a fine automobile, right? I owned a 67 Corvette Stingray, and I had lots of miles on it. I drove it every chance I got. Why? Because it was so much fun. It was so much fun. Okay, so it's a use it or lose it thing. How do you experience your life? By going out in the garage and hugging the car or rubbing the car? Or is it in spend the car? And see what it was about. Okay, more practically speaking and applicable in your life. Why are you going to work? You may be working already, yes? Why? So,
For money.
Preston, is that you?
Yeah.
Why do you want the money, Preston?
So I can save up to pay for college.
Why do you want college? Good question.
So I can become a teacher in the future because I need to get a teaching credential and a biology major, like certificate.
Why do you want to be a teacher?
Like I just really enjoy like teaching kids, and I really like biology too. So it would kind of mix both of like my passions.
Okay, so now you're dropping into the next category. So Preston, you hang on a minute. I'll get back to you. How many of you would be willing to do a job that you don't really enjoy if it paid enough? Would you? Colin? Probably, sure. I like Colin. He's got this awesome car. But besides that, Colin was willing to sell his soul. I like that about Colin. Right? Colin, I'm going to have you design algorithms that will manipulate people's lives so they buy products for the people that pay us to do that manipulating. Colin, I'm going to pay you. I have a friend that works in Silicon Valley. His single job, this is all he does for 200 some salesmen, is he keeps tweaking their compensation. It's like tuning a car engine. He just keeps tweaking it. Colin, all right, here's your quota for this week of success in manipulating people's decisions. Okay, if you meet that quota, $100,000 bonus at the end of this week. Colin's like, game on. There, buddy. Okay. I don't care what the product is. I don't care what the product does to other people. How can you be a person that manufactures cigarettes? Why would you do that? There's no upside of giving people cigarettes. Oh, well, we switched to vaping. That's helpful, right? Because that's so good for you. No, okay? So I don't care. What I want is the money because that gets me the stuff that makes me happy. But experience says it doesn't actually work. It doesn't keep you happy, and you can't ultimately keep the things that the money got you. And if you get enough of those things, you can't keep track of them. Okay? So, or should it work this way? This is what Preston was getting at. The money follows the product. And the product is about helping other people, and that's the thing that makes you happy. The economy did used to work this way more than it does now. People used to think about what they were going to do, in their civilization, in their culture, in their community? What am I going to contribute to the community, right? So maybe I'm a baker or a butcher or a candlestick maker, right? Maybe I'm a mason or a carpenter. Maybe I'm a physician. Maybe I'm a tailor, right? All of the things that we did with our life had to do with the essence of our life. Now we pretty much moved away from that. We don't do that work in the United States for the most part. We do things that don't actually have anything to do with what's integral to living, right? Which is why some people go camping, yes? Except no, I went camping, I had 10, I thought that's how you do it. No, then this $1 million big giant thing pulled in next to me and all these things slid out and the awning thing was, and like in 2 minutes, they were sitting in front of their fireplace with a glass of wine. Like, that's like more of the same, that's not different. So how can I be good enough to save me from being bad if I'm bad? It's a real simple question. Right? All right, let's see what the book has to say. Aaron, can you read 1 and 2, please?
In a wide or general sense, sanctification refers to the working of the Holy Spirit in the lives of people. In a narrower sense, sanctification refers to an inward spiritual transformation of a believer.
Okay. So the last chapter kind of, I hope, raised your awareness of the necessity of distinguishing things, right? Not kind of mixing everything up in a bowl, but keeping ideas straight. So for the rest of the chapters, you're going to be sensitive to this, right? Conversion is not a concept or a word that the Bible uses. So if we're familiar with it in different ways in our world, but we're not really being clear when we use that term, okay? Sanctification, same thing. In a broad sense, setting someone apart, right, in safety refers to the working of the Holy Spirit in the lives of people. So the Holy Spirit brings that, remember that iceberg thing with all the 14 things that the good message conveys? And there's more than that. Okay, the Holy Spirit brings that to you and he makes that yours in your life. Okay, so now you're in a safe place. Okay, from that safe place, then we move forward in time. What are you going to do with this life that the Holy Spirit gives you? In a narrower sense, sanctification refers to an inward spiritual transformation. See the problem with the word? Alex, do you see the problem with the word here, transformation?
Yeah, kind of.
Yes? What's the problem?
Isn't it that like no one can be like transformed like all the way or something?
Yes, remember the toy or the movie, the Transformers, right? The Transformer's still the same thing, even if it changes shape. Okay? So the believer isn't transformed inwardly, it's regenerated. That's different. It's not a different form or shape of the same thing, it's a completely different thing. And it exists inside the same old thing on the outside. So in a way, if you step back and you look at a person who's being sanctified and you watch them over time, you might say that person's being transformed. Okay, hang with, just give me a second, I'll show you what I mean. I never wanted to go to school, didn't like school, tried not to go to school. I went as little as I could. I tried not to do homework. I mostly never took a book home from school. I kept a piece of notebook paper in my back pocket in case I needed to write something down. Succeeded, got out of school early. That was it. 12th grade done. Well, then somebody got me to go to college. It seemed like they had a good idea, so I went to college. I did the same thing. What's the fastest way through Eastern Michigan University? Business, boom. And I'm through the program, done, good. On my way. Well, I'm also not good at languages. I finally got a D for dog in French in 8th grade, and my parents let me not have to take any more languages, okay? And then what happens after college? No, then I went for a 4-year master's degree and I learned 3 more languages, and then decided that there was more, so I went to 6 more years PhD program and learn 3 more languages. Okay, I found a way to not take public speaking in high school. It's absolutely required. Every human being on the planet must take a speech class in high school. I found a way to get out of it because I don't like talking to people in public. Transformation. How do you explain the fact then that I spend almost all of my time now studying or public speaking? It's not a transformation. The same me that didn't carry a book to high school still doesn't like any of this. It's an unwilling participant in something that's going on the inside of me, something that's driving me to do this, like that Saturn rocket pushing the capsule up into space. So we'll pick it up there next time. Have a great weekend. Do not come here on Monday. Well, you can, but I won't be here. You're welcome to join the 210 class by Zoom if you want to, be there for it live, but I'll record that class and send you the recording. Have a great weekend. God bless you all. Take care, all of you who are at home.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, Professor. Thank you. Take care, everybody.